what the plan is, we'll hear from some speakers, see a short video, and then between like 3 and 4, you'll have more chance to talk with Jan and Dave, say your own personal thanks. We knew, as I look around the room, we could probably have 100 stories, thanks to Dave and to Jan, but to try to move through the afternoon, we ask that you hold those stories till the time between 3 and 4, so you can personally convey your thoughts to either of them. Because otherwise we could be here forever and ever, hearing all the thanks, because I know the love is out there, definitely. So first we're going to start out talking a little bit about Jan Weerma, and I get to kick that off. So I've known Jan for quite a while. I was trying to figure out when we first got to know each other, but I think it was way back when we were doing natural church development. I think, so that, for those of you that know, that's been quite a while. And it's been a real honor and a privilege to work with her. Jan is one of those people, she not only brings out the best in people, but she has the unique gift to bring out the best in a group. She can help people work together so that they bring out and accomplish whatever mission they're working on as a group. And that's a rather unique talent. I think we've been really fortunate to have Jan in the Synod. I know just from my own personal experience years ago, when our congregation merged with the Methodists, and we had to come up with a new name. And I was president of the congregation then, I was really worried. I thought, oh, this process is going to reopen old wounds. Jan came in to facilitate the workshops to get a new name. And she made it such a positive, enriching process that everybody came out of it energized, excited, and positive. And I realized that my fears were totally baseless since we had Jan with the facilitation. So thank you, Jan. I could tell a million other stories, but...
A few weeks ago, they asked me to say some nice things about Jan as her pastor here at Trinity Lutheran Church. So I prepared some things to say. And then Deb said no more than 2 minutes. So I had to cut her down. Jan, I have been asked to introduce and to represent your church family. We go back a while. The first time I met you, I think, was at a party at Mike Key's house as he said goodbye to everyone and went to seminary.
Whoa, wow.
Don't you all count. Stop. Later, I ran into you again through the singing group Genesis. You had a son in the Genesis singing group that I was a part of, Brian. And he performed, which is surprised his mom to no end, he performed in front of people because he's really smart, but not always a people person. But that Genesis group had a number of Gresham High School water polo team members in the group. And I'm assuming they talked him into singing and dancing in Genesis. All of them called him Worm. It was a loving time. Then once again, I was at the Synod office, and they said that Jan Weerma was joining the staff. We've got to stop meeting like this. During those years, we spent many hours together, setting up for Synod assemblies, packing up after the Synod assemblies, setting up for bishop convos, and packing up after the convos were done. We had important work to do. The one thing I could always count on you for, Jan, were late night snacks and red wine. Yeah, there is much more. Jan, there was the time you decided that the synod office carpet was too dirty and no one was paying attention to it. So you rented a rug doctor and did it on your off hours. That was in the part where the job description that it said, and other duties. You are a faithful person, and I am so glad that I know you, I knew you, and I hope I will always see you around. Sometimes you supported this congregation when they needed you. Other times they supported you
Many more times.
when you needed them. And I think that's as good as it gets. You have a history with us here at Trinity, and on their behalf, thank you for everything.
How come you're sitting way back there? What's with that? Jan came on the Oregon Synod staff in January of 2012, that's 7.5 years ago. I was looking to hire somebody to hold down the administrative half of the office, and someone who could help me with what I was calling workflow management. What I had observed in my little way was that all the raw materials of staff work and people and things we were doing were going into the machine, and the widgets that were coming out didn't seem quite exactly what I wanted. So I wanted somebody who could help with workflow. Talked to Jan, she said, I can help you with all that, and I would love to work on the synod. It took her 7.5 years to convince me I was asking the wrong question from the get-go, which she knew when I hired her. But that's been a gift. Jan brought some 20 years of experience in the public and private sector to the Oregon Synod office. She's a lifelong Lutheran, a lot of that time spent here at Trinity, and a card-carrying Republican.
It's a long story. Hardly can come to an end.
I want you to know there's diversity on my staff. That's the point of it. And probably most importantly, Jan is a process design facilitation specialist. Jan's old school. She gets at the office about 7 a.m. every morning to get her work done before other people come and bother her. She will not let the phone ring without answering it, and will not talk to you without promising to get whatever it is that you need. So she would get in there at 7 o'clock. I would usually pull in 7:30 or so. I usually bike or walk to work, and I'm hot and sweaty, and I would sit down. So Jan would come in while I was cooling off to mentor me in the things I actually need to know in my office. And we had lots and lots and lots of really good conversations. And she would say, the widgets are actually fine, Bishop Dave. The problem is, the world around us has changed, and they need something quite different. She did this slowly so not to hurt my feelings or to make me feel foolish. But over the years, she has talked to me about how it is that you run an office that actually meets the needs of the church or the school or the corporations for which you're working, and that is her greatest gift. How can you, she would say, use the patterns of a 1990 office, which worked in 1990 very well, by the way, but for a 21st century church. So Jan Wiemer was the beginning and the end of the Oregon Synod staff, if I can say it that way. I worked on that line. I actually have it written here because I thought it was pretty good. And she's helped us transition in an amazing way. A couple bullet points here. One, Jan has never wanted to be center stage. Her joy is legitimately in helping others succeed, and not just me, but every person on staff. Every young person that has stepped through our office has immediately become a project for Jan. Quinn, her question for you being, how can we empower this person's gifts for a life of service and joy. Jan is service-oriented. Part of her duties as executive assistant were to take care of me, much needed, but a role that hardly happens anymore. Taking care of my airline tickets, my motel, my rentals, copying things off on paper and giving them to me before I leave so I don't get lost. I wouldn't be here today. We're not. Jan is known well in Chicago, which is the national headquarters of the ELCA, which is always a mixed blessing. She's known well because she's gone and visited them and helped them understand their realities as well as ours here in the Oregon Synod. The other executive assistants with whom she works around the country know her. And they will say, "You're doing what? How come you get to do that? How do you do that?" Because she has a different vision and different skills. And if that's not enough, Jan makes up work to do, like helping churches figure out their name. Jan is the one who conceived of and executed with James Armstrong, who's standing next to her there, the New Beginnings grant program for cohorts of congregations, took her out of the office into your church buildings to do work. Jan has created for the ELCA, for the Oregon Synod, a Lutheran Disaster Preparedness Grant, which brought the Evangelical Lutheran Church Hunger Program and Lutheran Disaster Relief together in tandem in a way they have never worked together before, and wondering what it is that hit them. What hit them was Jan Weirman. So Jan and every one of us on staff has said at some point or other in the last 7 years when you've been serving, something's not quite working. Something's not quite working. You, more than anyone, has been able to say what that is and what we can do about it. So I cannot thank you enough for your wisdom, insight, energy, vision that you have brought to the Oregon Synod office. Thank you, thank you. And will you please join me in thanking Jeremy. I don't know if you want rebuttal time or not, but if so, this would be the time to do it.
I inserted myself in the program later.
Oh, you have?
At the last moment.
Well, good for you. I have one more thing which is off script, and I get to do that today.
You get to do whatever you want.
Try not to make this last forever. But I cannot in good conscience be here today and say thank you to my staff without saying a word or two about Sarah Kruger. If you're keeping score, you know that all the long-term staff has now left. Susan Kintner, we celebrated 3 weeks ago for her fulfillment of her 12 years of call as assistant to the bishop. Jan is retiring at the end of this month. I don't see Mike here, but Mike, our DEM, took a call to Resurrection Lutheran a year ago, and then Glenn took a call here to Trinity in April. This was not totally unplanned. As we say, all of us knew that while we were wonderful people and did wonderful work, the configuration of staff just needed to change for the times. And so the staff has given a gift to me and to you by finishing up wonderful projects and then making space for the new. In October of 2017, I knew this was going to happen more or less, and had some sort of job description or something I was looking for, and into the office walked Sarah Kruger. Sarah is a lifelong Lutheran, went to PLU, does daily devotions and prayer out of a book, for God's sake, on a daily basis. Sarah has a rich background working with adoption processes and counseling and social work. And so as I talked to Sarah, I knew I had found seed corn for the next spring planting of the Oregon Synod. And I asked Sarah, I said, what's your goals? What do you want to do? And Sarah looked at me and said, I want to change the world. And I said to Sarah, do you think you can change the world through a synod staff position in the Evangelical Lutheran Church. She paused, said, "I'm willing to give it a try." So she came to work, and I said, "Can you juggle?" She said, "What do you need?" And I said, "Well, we need some help with finances, we need some help with financials, and some help with a variety of kind of office things." And she says, "Let me at it." Sarah gets stuff done when you ask her to get stuff done. So she did that for a little while, and said, "I'm not quite sure, I'm glad to do this, Bishop, but it wasn't quite our deal. I'm not sure I'm changing the world here. What else you got for me?" At that time, Mike Keys had organized the regional gatherings that we did a year and a half ago. And I asked Sarah to go to those. If you were one of those where you saw Sarah, she was being a support person for that and in the background, but that's not why she was there. She was there because she was cross-training and learning all about the Oregon Synod. And she was absorbing who you are and how you work. So she did that, and then I asked Sarah to go and work with Bonnie Beatles Bowley and the Transformational Leadership Initiative, and she went, she invested heavily in Amy Bruno and David Epplesheimer and Travis Larson and people who were doing that work, and Bonnie as well, and was sort of support around the staff, but that's not why she was there. She was there because she was learning all about the work of the Synod and how to put it together. Amy's worked with Katie Rustfold, wherever you went, Katie. Katie Rustfold and Bonnie and Deacon Laura Gifford as she takes on canvassy work and support them around the edges, but that's not why she's been there. She's been there because she's been learning how the Oregon Synod works and how to support the work. And I could go on and on and on. What I've never published is Sarah's real job title. And her job title is Oregon Synod Juggler Extraordinaire and Shapeshifter. Because no matter what balls I threw her and asked her to learn about, she could juggle them and juggle them and juggle them. And pretty soon you have this huge circle of things, including chainsaws and torches and bowling ball pins, and she's just juggling away at them. And it looks pretty awesome, and it is. But there's a secret to that work. That secret is you have to learn the pattern. You have to learn the pattern. And what I had asked Sarah to do was to learn the pattern so that when we had significant staff changes, she could be a part of that. Now, if you ever watch jugglers, they can't only do that, but all of a sudden, you know, with this big circle, all of a sudden they start to do this. And now all of a sudden they got a different shape and a different pattern. And sometimes they throw the pins between their legs behind the backs. That's just showing off incidentally. That's just showing off incidentally. And they have the ability to take the balls and share them in a reciprocal juggling with somebody else. That's what it means to be the pattern keeper and the shapeshifter for the Synod. Sarah, you did everything I asked you and more. You held up your end of the bargain. I did not. And I'm sorry about that. And I know you were practicing shapes I hadn't even given you permission to play with yet in your own mind as you did this work. So I want to thank you for investing so heavily in transition and difference. Sarah and Laura are still talking about how this might work, but I need to ask you to do something that was the last thing we were going to do, and that is to let the balls fall and let the pattern collapse. Because our new bishop-elect needs to look at those pieces one by one, and she can't do it if they're flying through the air. And she may ask you to help her understand those pieces. She may ask you to redo the pattern. She may ask you to do another pattern or none of the above. I don't know. That's not my deal. My crystal ball goes dark July 31st. But for your trust and your investment and your awesome work and your care and your investment in the leaders and whatever it is that God gives you to do, will you please thank Sarah with me?
I learned many, many things from Dave, as all of us have here in the room. So I'm going to have a few people come up and share with all of us their impressions of how Dave has impacted them and maybe their ministries. So I'd like to start with Bishop Michael Hanley from the Diocese of Oregon Episcopal Church.
Before I say a few words about Dave, Jan, I don't know you, but I know what it is to run an office. And one of the individuals who worked with me for many years was a woman by the name of Marie Bagwell. And I always knew I was in trouble if we were in the office and Marie started running. That meant whatever news she had to share with me, I probably didn't want to hear. So we are grateful for the work that happens around us as we do our work as bishops in the church. On my arrival to the Episcopal Diocese of Oregon in 2010, one of the first things I learned was that the Bishop of the Oregon Synod, Dave Brariki, had been the keynote speaker in 2007 for our Episcopal Diocese of Oregon Convention, and that everybody in the diocese who was there remembered what he had said 3 years later. It was a particularly challenging time in the diocese because the bishop at the time, John C. Eady, had announced his retirement and resignation during that event. And so what I learned was that Dave was a good person to have around when the times weren't easy, when they were challenging, when they were difficult. That's a particularly important piece to what it means to be a bishop, is to be there when times aren't good and to do a good job at helping people as they walk through times that are challenging. During my own time as bishop here in Oregon, I've had many occasions to witness Dave's intellectual capacities and his deep love and affection for the people with whom he is blessed to serve. He has spoken out in Oregon on matters of social concern from a deeply gospel perspective. He has led his synod in new ways into being the church and society, and he has been present to and pastoral with ELCA congregations experiencing transition and conflict. Dave cares deeply about this part of God's vineyard, and it shows in his efforts in all that he does in this place. A few years ago, Dave came to my aid when the individual who was supposed to be my keynote speaker dropped out at the 11th hour. And I made a quick call to Dave and I said, "Are you busy on this particular weekend?" And he said, "No, what do you got in mind?" And I told him I needed a keynote speaker. And not only did we have a keynote speaker that year, we had an excellent one. We had another speaking engagement where the people of the Diocese of Oregon learned and felt that they had gotten something from that congregation, that conversation, and that those words fit our context and what we were doing. So Dave, not only that, but he used PowerPoint on that same event. Finally, and particularly on a more personal note, I want to give thanks to Dave for his friendship throughout my time in Oregon. We began meeting for breakfast a few years ago at a place called Betty Lou's in Selwood. And I suspect the reason we started there was because our wives are really good friends and we needed to keep company just to keep up with them. Over time, those shared meals have been times of rich blessing for the both of us. So Dave, I know that God is not finished with you yet. And there is another chapter yet to be written, and I intend to continue to be blessed to be your colleague and friend here in Oregon. So I will see you soon again for breakfast, perhaps at Betty Lou's, where the coffee is good enough for a Lutheran, and the eggs Benedict good enough for an Episcopalian.
So Dave's commented that several folks have been lifelong Lutherans. I started out as an Episcopalian, so I got my foot in both camps here. Next, I'd like to ask the Reverend Paul Linneman, who is the district president of the North Pacific District of the LCMS.
Thank you. It's a real honor to be here, and I really appreciate the chance to share some thoughts with you, Dave, and everybody else can listen if you want to. 10 years ago, my life changed like that. I was at a district convention, I was a district secretary, and they elected me district president. And there was a guy in the Portland area who had been doing a similar job for about 2 years longer than me. And it wasn't too long after that that I got a call from Dave, and he reached out to help me figure out how to drink from the fire hose that happens during the first few years of being in this position. There's a long sordid story why I'm a district president and not a bishop, but I think our jobs are pretty much the same. And I think we have found ourselves in very similar situations. And our church bodies have their own unique challenges. I had someone ask me today if it was okay for me to be here. And I'm thankful to say it's more than okay. It's important for me to be here. And the good thing that I take from our relationship is realizing that Jesus didn't come into the world to save church bodies. He came into the world to save people. And as we have gotten to know each other over the years, I think that's been kind of the glue, one of the things anyway, that's held our relationship in a good spot. And it's a real blessing to find someone who knows what it's like to do what you do, who has a sense for the pain of it all, who has a sense for the joy of it all. I tell people all the time, my good days are great, my bad days are pretty rough. And that's kind of what it's like, I think, in a position like this. The Apostle Paul told Timothy that anyone who desires to be an overseer desires a noble task. What he didn't say is that it's not an easy life. And I think all of you who have been supported by Dave over these 12 years of service as the bishop here in the Oregon Synod really need to reach out to him, let him know how loved he is, how important his job has been, how much you appreciate what he's done, because it's a hard life. And I want you to know that I appreciate that. I am thankful to God for a number of things for you. I'm thankful that you are the man that you are, with the conscience that you have for caring for people, for situations that are present in this world that Jesus wants to redeem to, that are difficult and that bring a lot of suffering in people's lives. And you care about those things and you act on those things. And it's inspirational. And it's a real blessing. I'm also really thankful today that you're my friend. And I'm grateful for the chance to be here with you, to celebrate the way that God has used you as a blessing. Now, many, many, many years ago, God told somebody named Abraham, you are blessed that you might be a blessing to the world. And you are blessed. And you are a blessing. So thank you. God be with you, my brother.
Next, I would like to ask the Bishop Emeritus, Paul Swanson, to come up here.
Thank you, Deb. Let me begin by saying to you, Dave, and to Bishop Hanley, and to District President Paul Inman, you won't be like this 10, 15 years after you've been a bishop. You've had polio at 3 years old. One leg is suffering the residuals. The other is I pressure washed my deck yesterday, and I think I broke a toe on the other foot. And my back is killing me. So may that not be your plight in the next few days. It is indeed a joy and privilege to be here today. I was thinking back personally that 32 years ago, about this time, the first official letter that I ever wrote signed Bishop-elect was to David Broweriki, who was being ordained at Faith Lutheran Church in Seattle. I got that right? What was the date?
August 2nd, 1987.
Yeah, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to be there, and I was a new bishop and had to do something. I thought I probably should reach out. So I wrote a letter. I don't know what it said in the letter, but certainly to congratulate him and acknowledge his ordination as he began his ministry under call to Christ the King in Milton Freewater, which he served faithfully for a number of years, and then to Atonement Newport, and then 12 years ago was elected the Bishop of the Oregon Synod. And so 32 years later, I'm here now to write you another letter, I can say it personally, to acknowledge this chapter in your ministry, and to give thanks for your friendship and for your leadership and for all that you have meant to the life of our synod. I think I told Bishop Dave when he was elected that I'm going to stay out of your hair. You know where to find me. And I've tried to do that and hope I behaved myself. I worked with a couple of situations back when I was a bishop where we were working with another synod because the former bishop was in the hair and the problem for the present bishop. So I learned a lesson there well that I didn't want to get anyway associated with any problems that might be for the bishop of elect of our synod. But as I have sat afar or aside, what I have appreciated about your leadership, Dave, has been the visionary abilities that you had. David was the chair of our long-range planning group, and I don't remember exactly what year that would have begun, probably somewhere in the late 1990s, early 2000, and we did a rather vigorous activity across the synod around looking to the future and wondering what that may be. And I know we asked lots of questions and weren't quite sure what that was going to be about. And David's ability to be that visionary carried through in his ministry as the bishop of the synod, from my perspective and from I think all of us. And we look at our synod now in terms of the creative ministries that are occurring, and David's mantra to us always was, this is the church of the 21st century. It's not going to be like it was in the past. And how do we reach out and make that presentation for the future? So, we give thanks, David, for that visionary leadership, and certainly for your passion issues around social justice. And I know one of those passions of yours is around the issue of climate change and what that may mean for the future of our world, but also what we as the people of God and as the church are faithful to the first article of the Creed in terms of communicating and understanding our stewardship as God's people. So those are memories that I lift up now about your ministry and your faithful service in these years. Those were things I was not able to do in some ways. And so we always say God kind of brings along those people with those gifts. And David was, from my perspective, that person God called to bring this synod, which I thought we were at least off to a good start, into a new level, a new direction, and so over these past 12 years has done that, I think, admirably and very well. So now, as we look to the future and you look for the next opportunity God gives to you to live out your ministry, I hope that between now and then, as you make those decisions and you're about that matter of reflection, that you and Gretchen will find time for some rest, some renewal, some reflection, and some sense of just that sense of looking to the future, but with a kind of a sense of freedom to do that. That certainly is our wish, I'm sure, for all of us in the synod, but also to give thanks to you for that ministry that has been so gratefully given to us. So God's peace, God's joy with you. Don't fall on the deck. But I do have a closure. And even though I'm not pulling in people's necks at this point, it reminds me of a past association in time. God's blessing.
See, even former bishops can keep their sense of humor. That's good. Well, speaking of sense of humor, I've always enjoyed the give and take, particularly at retirements at synod assemblies and the dinners. So, Susan, I'm looking forward to what you have to say.
points. 12 years, pastor's heart, always trying to bring people together. I've been trying for a while now to come up with an appropriate and accurate visual representation of 12 years, and it's just been exhausting because, I thought of balloons. Balloons would be great, but the environment does not need the waste from those balloons. So this is what I decided. 6 dark chocolate bars, because we often joke and laugh about being the chocolate synod. You'd be amazed how much dark chocolate gets eaten there. And then 6 bags of chips. I even got a Doritos and a really gnarly, flaming hot nacho. Your Dave loves the crumbs at the end. We started in 2007. You were elected before Barack Obama, and where is he? The price of a stamp was 39 cents. I knew you would want that detail. You have a pastor's heart. You're willing to listen. You're curious. You understand and you support and you dream and you encourage and you confront when absolutely necessary. That's not your first default at all. But there was a steady parade of people who wanted the bishop to know what they were doing. Several of us in the office thought those could be 30-minute conversations, but they were always an hour, hour and 10, hour and 20, because you listened and you wanted to know. We met every Wednesday at 11 o'clock, except when you were on the road for Conference of Bishops, or regional work, or board meetings, or I was on the road. Bishops are gone at least 2 months a year just for churchwide. And those conversations that we had were always about the pressures and passions that our congregations were facing and our leaders were facing. And always working hard to connect, make the connection between churchwide and the congregation, always. You stayed connected to the weekly lessons in the lectionary. Every time you wrote a word for the week, always, always, there at the bottom was your reflections about the lessons this week. You love Scripture, and that Scripture often was what framed our convocations and our assemblies, and I don't personally think you were any happier than when you were at your computer trying to find just the right image for the brochure or the convo or the assembly. You had already done the work biblically to be ready for the conversations in 2007 about human sexuality in the Bible. So in 2007 and 8 and 9 and 10 and 11, all we did was talk about sex. And you were ready, because in our world, it came down to how do we interpret Scripture. That's the Lutheran response to that issue. How do we respond to that? And you were ready, and you engaged. The vote was in 2009, but that wasn't over. Then we had congregations who decided that they needed to leave. And that was strenuous in its own way. It was very hard. Then the economic downturn came in 2010, and Oregon felt that later, and it took us longer to recover than the rest of the country. We used to call Bend poverty with a view, because young people would show up for the recreation and then discover how cold it gets in the high desert in winter. And then, most recently, the conversation has been about adaptive leadership and transformational ministry and theological accompaniment. We're experimenting to be the church in new ways. Thank you for your sense of humor. Thank you for your friendship and care through the seasons of these 12 years. Thank you for our debates, although I'm sure I was always right. Thank you for your passion for the care for creation. Thank you for speaking up at the Conference of Bishops to explain the diversity we know in our temperate rainforest and how diversity is our strength as compared to the monoculture of a wheat field, for example. Thank you for being the big picture guy in our synod. Thank you for showing up for 12 years. Thank you.
I must have been reading my mind. I was hoping to take care of the chocolate myself. Well, I know Dave's done a lot throughout his whole term with ecumenical work. So I'd like to ask Jen Elfers, who's the president of the Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, to come forward.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dave, I bring greetings from Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. I serve as the president, and you all are a part of our organization. And I see many of you in the audience who have served on our board. Susan, past president a few years ago when I started. Mark, but anyway, I on behalf of our board and our staff, I just like to thank you so much, Dave, for your service to our state and for your commitment to, as Susan said, the big picture. We are a statewide organization that brings together diverse communities of faith to learn together, to serve together, and to advocate for issues that we all share in common. And Dave, you have been a key leader in our work statewide that flows not only through the state, but even has ripple effects across the nation. And I thank you so much for, as much as being a pastor and caring for your people, you also care deeply for the issues that are of great concern in this day, especially that we are experiencing together as communities of faith. I was looking at, first of all, I want to say you are one of the most down-to-earth bishops I know. You and Michael, you know. I work with a lot of religious leaders, and some of them are kind of stuffy. And you're not. You're very down-to-earth, and I really appreciate that about you. So I was looking around for a quote that maybe I could find that you had said, and I found this, and I thought it was particularly relevant to who you are. You said, "Indeed, we are called to be followers of the way, and acts of prejudice, anger, and violence have no place in such a call." I want to thank you for your prophetic leadership in living that out in your own life and in the ways and expressions of how you have cared for this community and the community at large. In a day when a lot of our values are being questioned and eroded, you have been that prophetic leader who has spoken out for climate justice in a time when the issue of whether or not this earth is to be cared for or to be squandered and abused is even at question. You have stood firmly that we are called to be caring for this earth for our generations and for the generations to come. I thank you for that, and I pray that you continue to do that work. You have been committed to immigrants and refugees in this state. We have seen incredible pressures that have been meted out against our refugees and immigrants. And you have stood as a religious leader with and for and support of immigrants and refugees who are neighbors and our friends, and have brought hope to those communities. And I thank you for that, for your prophetic voice there. I thank you for your prophetic voice on criminal justice reform and for standing for the repeal of the death penalty. Thank you for your courageous stand there, that the dignity of every human being, whether you have been incarcerated or whatever we have ever done, we are all children of God. I thank you for your commitment to LGBTQ human rights and civil rights, and for standing with our communities who are threatened in this day. Thank you. Your voice is so important, and we thank you for that. And I thank you for your commitment to the Common Table, which is a new initiative that faith leaders from across the state have initiated. We have brought together an historic group of leaders from mainline and Protestant congregations and Catholic and Sikh and Muslim and Jewish and LGBTQ community leaders and Native American leaders and Mormon. This is like looking, when we gather together, this is a little taste of what the beloved community should be. All of us sitting together, finding our commonness, wrestling with our differences, and asking the question, how can we serve together? How can we change the world together? And Dave, you have been so deeply committed to that, at the forefront of that, and I thank you for that. I thank you for your commitment to people in our communities who are living without housing, for people who are hungry, for creating just laws that will enable all people to share in the riches of God's blessing that we all deserve. Thank you for your witness there. I am encouraged by your sense of humor, by your kindness, by your candor. In fact, as Bishop Michael said, I was there the day at the I'm Episcopalian, I was at that convention, and I heard you that day, and I remember your words, and they were words that were prophetic and encouraging, and a time in our diocese when we were undergoing some difficult times. So thank you for being a peacemaker, for being a person who is truly committed to Jesus' way of peace and reconciliation and justice. And I look forward to working with you in the future, because we know God is still at work in you, and that we'll continue to serve together. Thank you.
I would now like to ask David Dewey, who is the President and CEO of Lutheran Community Services Northwest.
Thank you. I guess I'm the last speaker, and you know how they say, save the best for last? Just lower your expectations. So the first time I met Bishop Dave was with President Paul. I was 5 years ago. I received the call to this position at Lutheran Community Services Northwest, and I went down I-5 and met these two for breakfast, and they were already there. And I don't know which one of you did it, but one of you said, hey, when he gets here, let's make him pray. Yeah, thank you for that. That was so intimidating. I mean, I don't know you, I'm a pastor's kid, but come on, that was me. Anyway, I survived. I don't know how I did. I said amen, and then my first real interaction with Bishop Dave is my installation. So they had this wonderful installation for me, and you drew the short straw, and you had to do the message. And you had 4 cards, and I only have 3 because I don't get as much time as you. But I don't remember really what the first 3 said, But the last one, I was in the front row and I could see it, and it said this, "Sin no more." What did you know? I was like, I'm sitting there, and you hadn't gotten to that card yet, but I could see it. And I'm like, what did I get myself into? What does he know? And you're talking about prophetic, oh my gosh. So my first card for you is "Sin no more." That's on you. My second card, I've had some great moments with you. And the word that came is sanctuary. I was in the room in 2016 when the Oregon Synod voted to make a sanctuary, each church, ELCA church, a sanctuary for immigrants. And I cannot tell you what that did for me. I cannot tell you what it did for our staff. Because our staff are a group of immigrants and refugees and people from all over this world that were very fearful. And to go back and say, hey, this is what we stand for, I cannot tell you the difference that made, so thank you. And my last card is "Everyone is welcome." I don't remember what year it was, but I was at the Synod Assembly, and you had announced that we had 2 transgender delegates, and everyone erupted in applause. And I was like, this is where I want to be, where everyone is welcome to know Jesus. Everyone is welcome. And the effect you've had on our Lutheran Community Services ministry has been profound, and I cannot thank you enough. And I'll just close with saying, well done, and thank you for all that you've done.
Okay, the next speaker, you all know, Pastor Robin has been bugging me for the last month, I think. When we first said we were just going to have kind of a casual get-together and just a general open house, she said, no way, no way. And those of you that know Robin, she persisted. So we ended up with the gathering that we have today, and I want to thank Robin for that. It took a little twisting of the arms of both Jan and Dave to get them to agree to have people say nice things about them. But I will ask Robin, and then she can introduce our video.
Bishop Dave, you are the first poet bishop I have ever known. Words were important in your family of origin, and they became important to you. In the fall of 2007, I came to talk with you. You were still in your first couple months of serving as bishop when I showed up in your office, having recently concluded an 8-year call in Sacramento as an out lesbian pastor unwilling to comply with the ELCA's then policy of mandated lifelong celibacy for queer clergy. I had moved back here to Oregon temporarily, hoping that I might be invited to come back permanently. Since my closeted Oregon internship in 1996, I had spent a decade in Northern California, the land of we're here, we're queer, get used to it. In that conversation, you basically told me that Oregon was the land of you're here, you may be queer, but we don't talk about it and we pretend we don't know about it. That's how it was among bishops throughout the ELCA at that time. Hearing these words, I literally began to stand up and politely leave your office telling you I understood. That meant I either needed to leave Oregon or I needed to stay in Oregon and leave pastoral ministry. But then you said, wait. I think we need you in the church here. I really don't know how to do this, but can we just keep talking? You didn't make me promise not to be in a relationship. You said, the church needs you. And you asked for my patience while you, as a brand new bishop, set about trying to make a way where there was no way for me and for others. Or as Marty Haugen put it, to build a house where all are named, their songs and visions heard, and loved and treasured, taught and claimed as words within the word. Months went by with no suitable interview for me, and I had no income. You called and said, I'm embarrassed to even offer this to you, but we need an interim front office staff person, and if you are going to be underemployed by Kelly Services, I'd rather you come and be underemployed by me. That's exactly what he said. During the 8 months I served in that interim position, every so often you would come sit down at the chair beside my front office desk and acknowledge that you were, again, embarrassed to ask a question, but could I please tell you about LGBTQ this or that, or the real impact the policies of our church were having on our lives? You knew you did not know the right words, and you really didn't. And you knew you did not have all the answers, but you stayed in the conversation, and you asked me to stay too. You were willing to not know the answers, and that is what created the space for so much of what the Oregon Synod has now become. A rather eclectic anthology of poems, of words within God's Word. I have a friend, Nathan, who talks about going out into the woods and catching songs, which he then gives away to anybody who wants to sing them. You likewise seem to catch poems and share them. And you've also spent the last 12 years catching us and sharing us as witnesses within the larger church and the larger world. After you caught me and put me at the front desk in the Synod office, you subsequently asked if you could put my name in as one of 5 names for consideration as associate pastor of St. Andrew Lutheran Church, Beaverton. But they were not reconciling in Christ, and they were entering a big, expensive building project, and I said no. Several months later, when they decided not to call any of those other candidates, you asked me again if you could put my name in. I said, maybe? You said, it's okay, think about it. And then you submitted my name to their call committee that same night. You apologized to me at that front desk the next morning, not for submitting my name, but because you had told them I was gay rather than lesbian. I think you were still practicing the word lesbian. But when you preached for my installation, you used the word lesbian in your sermon to help the whole congregation know it was okay to talk about what the church had been telling us not to talk about for far too long. When you were invited in 2009 for the movement for full inclusion of LGBTQ folks to preside at the worship service in support of policy change at that 2009 churchwide assembly, you accepted. I was asked to be your assisting minister, and as we arrived in the sanctuary in Minneapolis to rehearse that service, you took in the information that they were telling you that if somebody broke through an invisible line right here around the chancel, that there were 2 men in the wings on that side and 2 men over in the wings on that side who were going to come running out to intercept that person, hopefully in time to protect us from harm. I saw the look on your face as you took that in. I watched you take in those scary words that I'd seen so many take in before, representing the fear that so many had felt for so long. And I realized you were with us. You were really with us. Bishop Dave, I would not be a pastor here, and it is quite possible I would no longer be a pastor at all, were it not for the fact that you asked me and so many others not to leave. You asked us to just stay and keep talking, and you kept dreaming with the Spirit and kept catching words to make manifest the word here. If this sounds more like a sermon, well, it is. Because I'm here and I'm a pastor. Thank you. I know you did not want to publicly hear all of our words. As always, your interest is on focusing upon what the Spirit is doing next, rather than celebrating some old history of what has been done in the past, but in allowing us to give thanks for the word catcher, the poet bishop, the one who would glimpse some spark of the Spirit and say, wait, let's just keep talking. You are allowing us to celebrate the poetry that God sent and you caught. And poetry needs to be heard.
Hi, Bishop Dave. Sorry I couldn't be there for your celebration this week. Just want to say thank you for creating a space in our synod where lots of voices could be lifted up and celebrated. Personally, I want to thank you for being a great listener who's infinitely curious and willing to hear what others bring to the picture as we look at the mosaic of God. Bless you on your journey. Thank you for creating space and paving holy ground as the Spirit unfolds in the Oregon Synod. Best wishes.
In 2007, I went to Synod Assembly as both a representative for my congregation and as a seminary student who was awaiting call. We got to participate in the incredible process of selecting a new bishop. Of course, that would be Bishop Dave. Within just a couple of weeks, I was invited in for interviews and was called to my place at Emmanuel Lutheran. As it would turn out, on September 16th, 2007, I would be the very first new pastor Bishop Dave would ordain. There's one beautiful addendum to that story of Bishop Dave being my bishop. 2017, really close to the 10th anniversary of my ordination, turned around to begin worship on a Sunday morning, and there sat my bishop. And I'm sure there was a very pregnant pause when I considered what have I done wrong and who has called the bishop. I quickly decided that wasn't the case, and indeed, he was there to celebrate with me. So Bishop Dave, thank you for being my bishop. Thank you for being the one who was there on my day of ordination, one of the most incredible days of my life. Thank you for being there when I got to celebrate my ordination, and blessings to you as you discover what's next.
Hi, this is Pastor Leo from The Flame. Missing you all there today. A couple of things I think about when I think about Bishop Dave is first at the Pride Parade a few years ago with your bubble wand and your shorts and sandals and exuberant joy, greeting everyone with such love and welcome, and that same spirit of glee and hospitality you've brought into so many aspects of your ministry, and I'm so truly grateful. Also, your patience with my many, many questions and challenges, and walking with me as I figured out that, oh yes, I can be a pastor, and I believe that I am a pastor because you are my bishop and you walked with me along that way. And finally, just so much gratitude for all of your support for the LGBTQ community and for all of your work in for the care of the earth. I just have so much gratitude in so many ways, and thank you.
Since the moment Bishop Dave's professional life and mine mixed and he ordained me, I knew things were going to be a bit different, beginning with his Birkenklogs. But one of the things I really appreciated with Bishop Dave was his ability to see that things needed to change and that we needed new tools and new assets and new people to be able to do that. And Bishop Dave was always really good at saying yes when we had a creative new idea and then helping us find the resources to make it all happen. So Bishop Dave, thanks for being our bishop. We're so pleased to have worked together, and we're excited about whatever future you've helped us create. Thanks, Dave.
Bishop Dave has encouraged, inspired, equipped, and befriended me. He ordained me in a blizzard that closed the freeway. He installed me on holy ground without his shoes after his GPS drove him into a muddy field and forced him to hike without robe, Bible, or sermon until he could hitch a ride out to Valby with a nearby rancher. He even installed me a second time on the eve of a first call retreat at Holden Village for both of us. When I felt inadequate as pastor or dean, he insisted otherwise. When I anticipated condemnation, he reframed my tale of woe and offered compassion. Dave, it has been a privilege to call you Bishop. I intend to keep calling you friend. Thanks for everything.
I'm Greg Shea, Vice President-elect of the Oregon Synod and a member of Trinity Lutheran Church in Gresham. It has been my privilege to work with Bishop Dave on Synod Council for the last 4 years as the representative for the Mount Hood cluster. In that time, I have seen that the Bishop cares deeply about the Oregon Synod and the ELCA. I have found Bishop Dave to be an eloquent speaker who is very knowledgeable and passionate about the Bible and the teachings of our church. I've appreciated his sense of humor. I have watched and listened as he has walked council through an issue or presented new programs. We have not always agreed on every issue, and that's okay and healthy for the discussion and the Oregon Synod. I always felt that he respected my and others on council's point of view, and I have seen Bishop Dave work directly with congregations on difficult issues. He always brought fairness and integrity to the discussions. I have come to think of Dave as a respected colleague, but more importantly, as a friend. Dave, thank you for your leadership in a thankless job. Thank you for your spiritual guidance. Thank you for your friendship. And may you have Christ's peace always.
Dave, here goes. I wonder if the Synod knows that what most of us see as an expiration date on food packaging, you read as its maturing date. I'm just saying, your sense of inclusion and what is viable is not the same as other sensibilities, and thank God for that. I wonder if the Synod knows that your solidarity with vulnerable communities, your investment in non-traditional ministry formations, your confrontation of misguided clergy, your quest for exceptional experience of the gospel through color and poetry and experiential learning, and frankly, your leadership style has not been normal. And somehow you've secured some significant staff around you to almost keep up with your current volleys into whatever insurgent expressions you're considering. And I wonder if the Synod knows how much of an advocate and a model you've been to minority members of the Church, as well as the Conference of Bishops. You created space for those voices that would otherwise not be realized. And even so, there are many of us who do know how exceptional you are. And while we will miss your leadership in the Synod, we are excited to hear what new ventures this closing chapter will open for you.
Hi, Bishop Dave. I feel so blessed to have learned from you and worked with you over the past few years. I'll always remember our trip to Poland in 2017. I was honored to be a part of that delegation, and I learned so much and enjoyed so much. Thank you for your forbearance in trading seats with me on Pastor Robert's wild ride through southwestern Poland. I will never forget your dawning concern as I leaned against the van in the gas station on the way to the Polish interstate, looking pretty green. So appreciation for that. But also on a more significant note, I remember a conversation that we had walking through the elementary school in Cheshire, where you talked about how so often we refer to the need to be deeply rooted. And you pointed out that Northwestern forests aren't deeply rooted, they're widely rooted. They connect to each other for mutual strength in the community of trees. You felt that that was a useful metaphor for the church here in the Pacific Northwest, and it is something that I've sat with ever since. It's these and many other lessons that I'll take with me, and I appreciate the opportunity that I had to learn them from you.
Bishop Dave, I really feel tremendous love for you, gratitude for you. You are in the back there because we are here in the retreat with the common table that we have been working together, and I admire you, and you have been very helpful for me. You make room for healing in my life. You make room for unfolding the gift, the spiritual gift that I have in my heart to share with the Oregon Synod. You make room for differences of different opinions. You make room for different approaches. and you have been part of the spiritual and theological mutual accompaniment from the beginning, with your openness, with your humbleness, and I have seen how you have been making room for voices within the Oregon Synod, and I'm very grateful for that. I couldn't be there today, but you are in the back. Okay? Thank you very much.
Bishop Dave, thank you for being my bishop, my pastor, my shepherd, mi compañero, all these years. My first bishop as a called pastor in this church. Our friend Juan Carlos has taught me that the word compañero means the one who shares bread with us. And I can't tell you what it's meant for me to have a bishop that takes that call to share bread so seriously and faithfully. The bread of our stories, the bread of our struggles, the bread of courage. I have felt so sustained on this journey alongside you alongside us. Know that you have nourished us well, and we are strong and healthy for the struggle and the mission ahead. Personally, I want to say thank you for trusting what this wild, rascally spirit has been up to in me as a leader and in my community, in those I love. Thank you for accompanying me to some pretty big rooms in some pretty high places over these years, and for trusting the new ancient shape of the gospel here in this place in Portland. I have said it repeatedly, and I will say it again. I have the best bishop in the ELCA. That is true. See you soon on the road and around the table, compañero. Peace.
I would not be the leader that I am today or serving in the capacity that I am today if it weren't for the way that you accompanied me, Bishop Dave. You have this uncanny vocational call to make space for things to grow and emerge. You did that for me when I was a young youth minister, discerning whether or not I fit within the ELCA and ordained ministry. You accompanied me as I discerned a call to mission development in this wild religious landscape that we find ourselves in here in Oregon. You've not just accompanied me, but you've also accompanied leaders that I accompany, people who are not Lutheran, but also not Lutheran, to companion them so that they see themselves as a part of this ecosystem, this ecology of leadership. You've invested in them. Thank you. You've accompanied me and others as we made space to discern potential calls to civil disobedience that ended up being civil disobedience. Thank you for all the ways that you've made space for me, and my leaders, and my leadership. I hope that I can do the same for others. To be a bridge between the ELCA and the Oregon Synod and our institutions that we love, and the emergence of the new, and the ways that God's Spirit is working in our neighborhoods and communities, so that we can be in conversation with one another, so we can powerfully act together. Thanks, Bishop Dave. Thanks for everything.
Bishop Dave, I want to take just a moment to thank you for the enormous impact that you and your ministry have had on my life personally, and also on my life with Robin, my beloved. I got to know you when we invited you to co-officiate our wedding in 2015 with my conference minister, Walter John Boris, and we ended up doing our premarital counseling with you, and you were funny and you were insightful, and we really felt supported by you. And the wedding itself was it was just beautiful. We were so glad that we asked you to do the sermon, and our friends still talk about that sermon. by far, many of them said the best sermon they'd ever heard at a wedding. We couldn't believe that you actually were making cultural references to the Matrix, even with red and blue stones in hand to give to us. And it was funny and moving and memorable. And that was just really the beginning of the relationship that I've had with you over the last few years. So enjoyed working with you in my interim ministry at St. James and through the mutual theological accompaniment process. And in that, I've come to know you as someone who has a tremendous heart, and a heart that's strong for justice, and also an ecumenical heart, and so appreciate your commitment to ecumenism, as well as your commitment to our earth and justice and so many other important things. You've been an incredible leader, and you will be missed as bishop.
So if any of you were at Synod Assembly at the banquet on Saturday night, Jan had an opportunity to speak, and she said that she was a little bit nervous because her doctor had given her the go-ahead to have a couple of glasses of wine, and she didn't know what was going to come out of her mouth. I'm thinking of that right now. Because I haven't had any wine, and I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth. So patience is not always my strong suit. And when I started at the Synod office not even 2 years ago, part of my learning of the Synod, I decided that my type A and I needed to clean house. And I started organizing. Jan is an archiver, I am a thrower. I mean, really, has anyone referenced those wall sheets from a meeting 3 years ago? And do we need to keep them? It even spread to our food and the meals that we shared as a staff. The first time I was in charge of buying food for our Synod Council meeting, I bought more protein and veggies instead of a cookie platter and afternoon coffee. Clearly my Lutheran roots aren't that deep. I did not even buy soda. On the surface, Jan went along with it, and then went and bought soda. I knew I had crossed a line, however, when I replaced the Dr. Pepper in the refrigerator with Dr. Zevia. A healthier version of Dr. Pepper. Dave was kind enough to go along with it until the day that he poured some into a glass and looked at it and said, "It's clear." It's supposed to be brown, I'm out. So these last 2 years, I've had fun. I've had fun not just because we laughed together, but because I've had the opportunity to work with a staff that's gifted, generous, faithful. This is where I don't know what's going to come out, because I have these notes, but there's nothing that I can say right now that hasn't already been said about Jan or about Bishop Dave. Jan, you're an institution. Everyone knows who you are. Everyone. What I know about you is that you give. And you give in a way that reflects your deep desire to have everyone's full potential met. I am grateful for the space that you have given me and the way that you have helped me to shape that. You've shared with me your stories, your experiences, and your expertise, and I thank you. Bishop Dave. It has been my honor to witness and be the recipient of your kindness and your empathy, your wisdom in pursuing what is just and what is right.
You've done it with grace, you've done it with courage, you've done it with love. The way that you have the ability to accept people for all of their humanness, not just their humanness, but your humanness as well. It's a gift, and it is a true witness of your faithfulness to God. I would love to put in a humorous story right now, but I am reaching the edges of my emotional capacity at the moment. So what I will say is this. Everything that people have shared today, it's all true. And what I have recognized in the 2 years that I've been able to work with you is that you don't just hold space for people, you make space for people. That is your legacy. We're letting the balls drop, and not just with our staff, but with our synod, because this is what needs to happen. Thank you for being my colleague. Thank you for being my friend.
And now Jan gets to speak.
As in all things, I've made my desire known and inserted myself in the program. For a couple of reasons. I felt I had earned the right to bat cleanup. First of all, thank you to my amazing Trinity family. I promise I'll come back to you. I promise. When I started working for the church, and also through my husband's very long illness, but especially when I began to work for the church, I realized I was too tired on Sunday to go to church. And people said, oh yeah, didn't anybody tell you that? So apologies, and I promise I'll be back. Thank you also, Pastor Glenn, and to my amazing colleagues. It's been a real joy to have interviewed for a position in which I said some pretty outrageous things. I remember I asked around the table, what do you all need to accomplish in the next few years? And the answers were very big. And I said, you know, you don't have to hire me, but you better get somebody who knows what they're doing. I had never been that bold ever in that kind of a conversation. And thank you for allowing me to be that big the whole time. Surprised even myself. And I'm already at my emotional capacity. Those morning conversations are the best thing ever in my career. It's a real gift to come into the office and say, wow, let's just take a moment to hear questions like, what is it that you want to have happen? What do you see? And let's talk about what that means, because that's what it is to be bishop. It's your vision. And I'm just kind of a good technician. So thank you. And thank you, Robin. And thank you, Debbie. And I could go on, and thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Carolee, for being here. And I am very excited about what's coming next for the Oregon Synod. When we recognize talent not by their resume, this woman said, I don't have a resume. And I said, yes, you do. And to all of you who I've had the privilege of working with, to Jeff, the first time he came into the office and he said, executive assistant, more like executive director. And I said, thank you. That's actually what I have in mind. So just my thanks. And please enjoy the food and the beverages. And we're making him have a glass of beer. I'm just saying. Thank you.
So last but certainly not least, Dave.
Nobody's making me have a glass of beer. So, thank you. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for being here, and thank you for saying nice things. I've got rebuttals for all of them, we won't do them. But I have one last thank you. Paul Lindman mentioned that sometimes the work is isolating and difficult, and that's true. But those of us who are CEOs of church organizations and bishops and presidents have built-in support networks. Bishops' wives do not. So I would like to thank Gretchen, who's there in the back. Say hi. Gretchen and I were in Milton, Freewater, Oregon for 18 years when we raised our family and had our kids, and she had a thriving midwifery practice, which she totally loved. That was from 1987 to 2005. In 2005, we finally screwed up our courage to go do something else. My older two kids were in college and were going that way. My youngest, actually, that's not true. My daughter Claire was in her senior year in high school, so we deserted her for the last year of her senior year in high school. Almost got that wrong, didn't I? That's my daughter Claire back there, and my granddaughter May. So Gretchen and I, we took a very exciting call to Atonement Lutheran Church in Newport. Gretchen had grown up in Florence and loves the coast. And she began to invest. We don't move really easily and well. Gretchen began to invest in friends and church and new work and getting our youngest son through high school. And it was less than 2 years that we were there when I was called to be bishop. That was exciting for me. What that meant for Gretchen is that she lost her friends, and lost her church, and lost her husband, and lost her new job aspirations, and lost her connections with her family just down the coast, and on and on and on. And moved to a place where she doesn't like big cities. And so I'm not sure it's better having me back. we're going to see about that. But Gretchen, on behalf of not just me, but lots of people, for your support and your forbearance and your corrections and your encouragement and your prodding and your not being elected bishop and a lot of things. I want to say thanks to you for all